Hi, and welcome to episode 121 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram and Periscope. And today is Sunday, October 18th, 2015. A couple weeks ago, I had to sort of pause the podcast while recording because I had a cake in the oven. And this week, I have an apple pie in the oven, so if the timer goes off, I'm going to have to stop and check on that. But I found Jonathan apples at the grocery store, and I had hoped to get over to Minnesota to La Crescent to get, because they have really good apples over there, and never got around to doing it. So I saw Jonathan's, so I bought them. I had to make an apple pie, because in the fall, when I was growing up, my mom baked an apple pie every Sunday as long as I can remember. She baked an apple pie, and she always tried to use Jonathan's, like when they had them around. So that is one recipe that I was sure that I had written down that I could duplicate it, because, it's something about you have to have it just like your mom made. But this is a knitting podcast, so let me start out and show you what I've been knitting on this week, what's on my needles. And let's see, I guess I will start out with a project that you have seen before. I'm both happy and sad about parts of it, so, but you haven't seen it in quite a long time. I think I started this at the end of March, or maybe the beginning of April. It was right around the time that I was finishing up my egg bows, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the cuffs and the bottom band of that sweater, and I adapted a lace pattern from a Japanese stitch dictionary, and then I used the chart that I drew up, I used for the shawl that I'm going to show you. It's a shawl out of handspun that was roving that a friend of mine dyed for me and gave to me. She's not a professional dyer, but she just enjoys doing it. So I think I partly spindle spun, partly wheel spun. But I kind of put this aside. I got like maybe halfway through, and then I put it aside last spring. It's kind of when I started kind of concentrating on that green lace shawl, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for the bottom. I'm just sort of kind of knitting this as I go. I started doing this lace stitch kind of in bands in it. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do for the bottom. And then I decided what I wanted to do for the bottom. I just needed kind of time to figure it out. And so in August, I picked this back up and started with what I wanted to do. And I wanted to make a double ruffle for the bottom. I wasn't able to do the double ruffle. I mean, I had it figured out, and I had about 2/3 of the first one done, and I could see that I wasn't going to have enough yarn to do like the whole second one. I had 622 yards, and apparently this is not like the magic green lace yarn that just goes on practically to infinity. This was a solid 622 yards. So I could see I wasn't going to have enough. What it looks like now, I can't remember. I think I was down to like close to here when I showed it to you the last time last spring. So it's a gradient that goes from this sort of darker wine color to a lighter kind of dusty rose color, and then the last color is kind of a champagne color. So it goes to like there. And then it just has these bands. So my sad about this project was that I'm not going to be able to do the double ruffle. I really wanted a double ruffle, but not badly enough. Like if I had started kind of right after this band here, then I probably could have gotten one done, but I didn't think that was going to be kind of a wide enough, big enough little shawl. Ruffles take a lot of yarn. So, but my happy about this is I love how the handspun is like this kind of stripiness in it. And I love how this kind of waving like stitch pattern like shows off that it just makes me really happy. It's just like serendipitous that it's because this top one I was looking at, this top one has like a darker little stripe right in the middle of the lace band, and then the next band has the dark at the top and the bottom of it, and then the next one has it it kind of breaks for the next color right at the bottom of that band. I mean, and I didn't like play around or like work at getting that to happen. It just happened. And then this one has a dark stripe kind of in the middle. So I'm about 2/3 of the way through this last of the lace band. So I started to do the double ruffle and, could see that I wasn't going to have enough. So then I decided I'll just do one more of the lace bands. And then, so this is how much I have left of that kind of rose color. And then the whole like middle one, I'm going to do like a ruffle and just use that whole amount, probably ending with this little eyelet, because it needs to have a ruffle on it. I don't know what it is, but this shawl needs to have a ruffle on it. At least one. If I can't have two, I want one. So I am working this on size 6 needles, which is 4mm. And I'm actually saying that more for my benefit than for yours, so that in case I forget, that I can always look back and say, wonder what size needles I use for that shawl. Because I have not been posting anything on Ravelry lately. I kind of figure if I say it on here, that's a record of it. Somebody wrote to me once and was scolded me that my Ravelry project page wasn't up to date. And I just wanted to say, Ravelry is not my job. So, but anyway, I'm really liking it. The yarn is hand spun, or it was part spindle spun, and it's merino. I don't think it's superwash merino. I think it's just regular merino, and I just it's nice and soft. It's spun to maybe a heavy lace or kind of like light fingering, probably like a heavy lace. But anyway, that is a project that I picked up and was working on this week. And then I have another handspun project that I wanted to show you. And because it's October, I started a new sock. I know I talked about this last summer. If you remember, I spun some Sun Valley Fibers Superwash BFL in the Boundary Waters colorway. I think it was half wheel spun, half spindle spun. I was trying to get matching skeins for socks so that both socks would be the same, and I didn't really achieve that. One skein had quite a bit more yardage than the other one, but I just couldn't. So this is what the yarn looked like. It's kind of blues and kind of golds, and so I was just going to cast on the toe of this sock. And then it was kind of late at night and Netflix was on, how they just kind of keep rolling. And I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop knitting. So I ended up kind of halfway down my foot knitting. And it's so fun. It's so fun knitting handspun. especially handspun socks. Um, I just love, again, how these colors are playing, and there's not really a stitch repeat. It's just how they were spun. I think I should have to go back and look at my old podcast, but I think I split the whole thing in half lengthwise and then spun it as it came, and then just let it barber pole. Um, but anyway, beautiful, beautiful colors. It's funny. It's a in the braid, and while I was spinning it, and even the finished yarn, it didn't feel like BFL. It felt softer than BFL. And kind of like finally now when I'm knitting it, it feels a little more like BFL. It doesn't have that sort of like total, um, springiness, like squishiness. I mean, and the yarn itself is actually pretty springy, if you can see that. Uh, it's just kind of in the knitted fabric. It's not as kind of cushy like merino is. So it finally feels like BFL. So that's why I think that these will be like really nice socks. It's just a 2-ply, so um, I'm fine with that. And I thought I would show you just an update on the sweater project that I showed last week, the Elizabeth Zimmerman hand-to-hand cardie. I did that sort of with, when I was doing the yoke sweater, I had new projects to show you, but then I kept that one as constant. So I'm hoping that um, is sort of a good way of kind of having different things to talk about, but then having a bigger project that takes a long amount of time, so that it kind of keeps a consistency throughout all the episodes. So anyway, this is the sleeve of my hand-to-hand cardie. There you can see the cable. And actually I knit this whole amount last week, because I think last week I had, maybe 5 or 6 inches done. And every time I would pick it up to work on it a little bit, I would look at the cast on and think, oh, I hate that cast on. Oh, I don't like how that looks. And so finally I just thought, this is ridiculous. It's 6 inches in, but still, I would rather rip it out than every time looking at that and saying, oh, I don't like the cast on I use. Or I don't like. I think when I originally cast it on, my intention, I thought, well, I'll probably be just doing an I-cord around there anyway, so you won't really see that. And I still might do an applied I-cord just because I love the finished look of it. But I ripped it out and redid it. Used a different cast on. I used a German twisted, but like pearl style German twisted. So anyway, that is my sleeve. This was one skein, one full skein of the Bartlett yarns. So I have a lot. I love how it's coming out, and this color is so pretty. I wish it showed up correctly. It just looks too purple. It's a really pretty. It's not a royally blue, but it's just a very pretty kind of medium blue. I'll tell you, it's making me really wish that I had done my coat out of this. I don't think it's making me want, wish that when I ripped it out that to knit it into the coat instead, because I don't know that I would ever want to knit that coat again. But really, when you think about it, I have the same amount of yarn that I'll be knitting into this garment that I used for the big coat. So I don't know, but I'm just going to be really happy to have a big kind of sweater out of that, because it's such a pretty color. I think it'll be uplifting during winter. So in Off the Needles, I have something off the needles, and you might have guessed seeing that you saw that I cast on a new sock, that I finished another pair, and I finished my blue lollipop yarn socks. This is the Blue Skies color. Got them nicely matching. This is the Blue Skies color of lollipop yarn. I love this yarn so much. The base, it's the perfect sock yarn. It's thin enough so that when your socks, your finished socks, like fit in your shoes, that you don't need a bigger shoe size to get them in, but they're nice and like smooth. I don't know if it's the twist on the yarn or what, but it's really nicely smooth as compared to kind of that Regia yarn. So, and I brought one of my shoes so that so you can see. So these are my shoes, my Sandra, Fluevog Sandra's, and these are the socks that match them. Did she do like, really? I mean, I had this sock yarn way before these shoes were ever made. So now I can wear them together. I'm looking forward to wearing them together. So since this had a lot of handspun projects that I showed, you might think that, did she give up spinning? She hasn't shown any spinning for weeks. And I've actually had finished spinning 4 weeks for probably a month. I talked about it on a couple episodes that I recorded about it, and then I just cut that section out because I had a bunch of other stuff I was talking about, and I thought, oh, I could just, talk about that next week. So instead of me just talking about it this week, what I'm going to do is just insert what I did a couple of weeks ago and put that in here. So this is the yarn that I spun. I showed you I bought some Falkland roving at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool. So, and I was going to spin it as a fat single. Well, that's what I did. So I'll show you so you can see all the colors. So it's a big fat single. It's kind of different for me. I'm not usually, usually knitting lace weight stuff. So I'm going to hold it up. I don't usually do this because after you've spun for a while, like getting things that are balanced is kind of the norm and not the exception. But so you can see I'm holding this up, and it's pretty balanced yarn. So, and it's a singles. So, as I learned it, if you're going to spin a singles yarn, you kind of want to think of that when you're setting out, so that you can just put that much twist in it. So this is, this is, try to find like a thicker section. So it's yarn. I'm pulling on it. It's not like drifting apart. And that's like one of the thicker sections. So it's actual yarn. It's not like taffy that it's kind of still drifting apart. But it's still like relatively balanced. Now, I didn't do anything to this that I wouldn't normally do to my skeins. So, I spun it, put it on my nitty knotty, soaked it in water, took it out, just popped it a couple times, over my hands. I didn't full it. I didn't plunge, from hot to cold. I didn't whack it and thwack it on door frames. I didn't do anything. So, and then I, had it, and I just hung it up in the shower, where I usually hang my skeins. There was nothing weighting it to make it hang straight. There's nothing. It's the amount of twist that's in my singles. So as I learned it, and I'm a very much of a self-taught knitter, but spinning, when I came to spinning, I thought I had opportunity to take classes, and so I've taken classes from a lot of people, but I credit most of my spinning what I know from spinning to, well, two people, but most especially to Patsy Z, who I was able to take a lot of classes. At the time, she lived in the Chicago area, so she taught classes, like Wisconsin sheep and wool and the Wisconsin spinning, and then I did take 2-week-long workshops with her at the John Campbell Folk School. So when you're spinning a single, you can't just, start spinning and then look at it on the bobbin and say, oh, that looks really pretty like that. I think I'll make it a single. Because unless you're going to go back and like take some of the twist out, if you're just spinning it like you would, like your normal yarn that you would normally use to ply, it's going to have too much twist in it. And that's why you have to go through all those methods and like trying to like felt it and stuff so that it, because this is spun. It's not going to fall apart. I'm like pulling on it, and, and it's not coming apart. So what I did to spin this is I used my Ash for Joy, and I had the Wildflower on it because this is going to be a bulky yarn, and I knew it would. The Ashford bobbins aren't that big, so the Wildflower has a big jumbo bobbin, and then it has like a big kind of, it's not really a delta orifice because it's a big circle, but it will, take anything an inch, big, that you can fit in there. So you can, spin lots of things, but you can spin a big chunky yarn too. So I had that on my wheel, and I had the drive band on the largest whirl, so it had the least amount of twist, and I really, really cranked up the tension because I tend to spin with very little, tension on my brake band. I think I probably spin with less than most. So I really cranked my brake band so that it would shoot onto the bobbin faster than normal, so that it wouldn't keep adding twist, once I wanted or did want it to. And then I treadled slowly and, drafted out the amount of yarn I wanted, for a thick single. Because if you take your yarn, like that's going into the bobbin, and you let it ply back on itself, and if it forms a really nice plied yarn, there's too much twist in it for singles. So if you have, like so when this plied back on you couldn't see any sort of definition between the plies, but it still held together. If I like pulled on it, it was still yarn. And so that's the trick of getting a singles yarn that it's going to be fine to knit with. This reminds me so much of monos. And there's like thicker and thinner spots. It's not like perfectly uniform. There's thicker, areas, because that's not my sort of normal like spinning. But it's fun to do it once in a while. So anyway, that was a really fun little spin. Right now I am spinning, I did take the bobbin off the wheel, but I'm spinning the other fiber that I bought at Sheep and Wool. It's the Camel, Merino, and Silk. And I'm spinning that down to my normal lace weight. And I will either ply it with, I have some Tussa that I'm thinking is that same sort of cream color. So I'm thinking I might spin that up and then ply it with it. If it turns out when I go back and look and it's not the same color, I have some silk thread I could ply it with. Or I think I bought something soft and beautiful and white last year from Sharon. I think it had more silk in it because I remember it being kind of shiny. So maybe I will spin that up. I don't know. But anyway, that's going to be a lace weight yarn. It just looks like off-white. So I've still been spinning probably every night, and I'm still, working on that really soft. It's camel, merino, and silk. It's spinning up super thin, and it's just a pleasure, pleasure to spin that stuff. So it's taking a long time, so that's all right. I don't have anything like show and tell, no kind of purchases, but I know that you'll get a lot of those from all the people who went to Rhine. But so I don't have anything like that to show you. Next week, there might be shoes. So stay tuned. Come back for next week. So I guess I better go check on my pie. I hope you all have a really great week. Thank you all so much for watching and for getting in contact with me, over the last week. It's so fun to hear from you. And until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.